You think discipline is something you lack. That's the lie. You've been told you need more willpower, more motivation, more inspiration, another podcast, another book, another Monday to start fresh. But here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. You're not undisciplined because you're weak. You're undisciplined because you've been comfortable. And comfort is the most dangerous addiction on the planet. Right now, you're living a life you didn't design. You're running software someone else installed. Your habits? Not yours. Your daily routines? Borrowed. Your excuses? Inherited. And every single day, you wake up and tell yourself the same story. Tomorrow I'll start. Tomorrow I'll be different. Tomorrow is a graveyard for dreams. This audiobook isn't here to motivate you. Motivation is a spark that dies in the wind. This is about forcing yourself into a new operating system, about changing your life 360 degrees, not just tweaking the edges, but flipping the entire foundation. You're going to learn how to make discipline so automatic, so inevitable, that your old self won't even recognize you. But I'm warning you now, this isn't gentle. This isn't about affirmations and vision boards. This is about confronting the part of you that's been sabotaging your future for short-term relief. And if you're ready to burn that version of yourself to the ground and build something unbreakable in its place, then let's begin. Chapter 1. The Comfort Trap You Call Living. You're not lazy. You're trapped. And the worst part? You built the cage yourself. Brick by brick, choice by choice. You reinforced it every time you hit snooze, every time you chose the couch over the gym, every time you scrolled instead of started. You call it relaxation. You call it self-care. You call it just this once. But it's none of those things. It's a slow burial. Let me paint you a picture. It's Sunday night, you're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, and that familiar weight settles into your chest. You know the one. It's the feeling that whispers, you wasted another weekend. You said you'd start. You said this time would be different. And you promise yourself, again, that Monday will be the day. Monday, you'll wake up early. Monday, you'll eat clean. Monday, you'll finally start that project, that business, that dream. But Monday comes and the alarm goes off and your hand reaches out, not to rise, but to snooze. And in that single motion, you've chosen comfort over change. Again, here's what nobody tells you about comfort. It's not neutral. Comfort isn't rest. Comfort is slow motion decline. It's the warm bath you're drowning in while convincing yourself you're just soaking. Neuroscientists at Stanford discovered something chilling. The human brain is wired to prioritize immediate relief over future reward. It's called hyperbolic discounting. Your brain literally values the pleasure of right now more than the transformation of tomorrow. So when you choose the easy path, you're not being weak, you're being human. But here's the thing. Being human got you here. And here isn't where you want to stay. Comfort has a voice. It sounds rational. It sounds kind. It says things like, you've had a hard day. You deserve this. Or, you'll start tomorrow when you have more energy. Or, one more episode won't hurt. And you listen, because comfort speaks in the language of self-compassion. But it's not compassion. It's sabotage dressed in a blanket. Right now, your life is a reflection of your tolerance for discomfort. Look around. Your bank account, your body, your relationships, your career. Everything you see is the result of how much discomfort you've been willing to endure. And if you're honest, truly honest, you'll admit you've been choosing comfort over growth for years. The brutal truth? Comfort is killing your potential, one convenient choice at a time. But here's where it gets interesting. You already know this. Deep down, you've always known. That's why you feel that Sunday night dread. That's why you bought this audiobook. Because some part of you, the part that's still alive, still fighting, knows that the life you're living isn't the life you're capable of. You're capable of so much more. But capability means nothing without activation. Discipline isn't about becoming a robot. It's not about grinding yourself into dust or hating every moment of your day. Discipline is about reclaiming your future from the tyranny of right now. Imagine this. 6 months from now, you wake up and you don't need an alarm. Your body's trained. You rise because that's who you are now. You look in the mirror and you see someone you respect. You check your bank account and it's growing. You think about your goals and you're actually hitting them. How did you get there? You stop negotiating with comfort. Because here's the secret they don't want you to know. Discipline isn't something you find. It's something you force. You don't wait until you feel like it. You don't wait for inspiration. You decide and then you move, and your feelings follow. The version of you that's going to change your life 360 degrees, that person doesn't live in comfort. That person lives in the gap between who you are and who you're becoming. And that gap? It's uncomfortable as hell. But it's also where transformation lives. So the question isn't whether you're capable. The question is whether you're willing to get uncomfortable enough to find out. Because comfort will never give you the life you want. It'll only give you the life you've settled for. And you didn't come this far to settle. Chapter 2. The Myth of Waiting for Ready.
You're waiting. You're waiting to feel ready. Waiting to feel motivated. Waiting for the perfect moment when everything aligns and taking action feels easy. Let me save you some time. That moment does not exist. You will never feel ready. Not really. Because your brain isn't designed to embrace the unknown. It's designed to keep you alive. And alive, to your ancient wiring, means safe. And safe means the same. So every time you say, I'll start when I'm ready, what you're really saying is, I'll start when it's comfortable. And we just established that comfort is the enemy. Here's the truth. Readiness is a myth sold to you by the part of your brain that fears change. Think about the last time you did something that actually mattered. Something that scared you. Maybe it was a difficult conversation. Maybe it was quitting a job. Maybe it was starting something new. Did you feel ready? No. You felt terrified. Your heart was pounding, your palms were sweating, every fiber of your being was screaming at you to turn back, to stay in the familiar. But you did it anyway. And what happened? You survived. And more than that, you grew. That's the pattern. Action first, confidence second. Researchers at the University of Scranton found that only 8% of people who set goals actually achieve them. 8%. And the difference between the 8% and the 92% isn't talent. It isn't intelligence. It isn't even resources. It's the willingness to start before they're ready. The 92% are waiting. Waiting for clarity. Waiting for permission. Waiting for a sign from the universe that says, yes, now is your time. The 8%? They're moving. Imperfectly, awkwardly, scared out of their minds, but moving. And momentum, once started, builds on itself. Here's what waiting costs you. Time you'll never get back. Opportunities that pass you by. A life that stays the same while you watch others transform. You think you're being cautious. You think you're being smart. But you're not. You're being afraid. And fear, when left unchecked, will convince you that waiting is wisdom. Let's get specific. Right now, there's something you know you need to do. Something you've been putting off. Maybe it's starting a workout routine. Maybe it's launching that project. Maybe it's having that hard conversation. You've been telling yourself you'll do it when the time is right, when you have more information, when you feel more confident. But the time is right now. The information you need will reveal itself in action. And confidence? Confidence is the byproduct of doing the thing you're afraid of, not the prerequisite. You want to know the real secret of disciplined people? They don't feel different than you. They're not more motivated. They're not wired differently. They just stopped waiting. They forced the first step, and then the second, and then the third. And somewhere along the way, the forcing became automatic. You've been taught that discipline is about willpower, that it's about gritting your teeth and muscling through. But that's not sustainable. Willpower is a finite resource. It depletes, and when it runs out, you're back to square one. Real discipline isn't about force in the moment. It's about designing your life so that action is inevitable. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Right now, you just need to understand this. Waiting is not a strategy. It's a slow surrender. Every day you wait, you're casting a vote for the person you currently are, and that person, they're not going to take you where you want to go. The person who's going to change your life 360 degrees hasn't been born yet. You have to force them into existence, and that starts with the decision to stop waiting. Picture this. It's 1 year from today. You're sitting exactly where you are now. Same job, same body, same habits, same frustrations. How does that feel? Now picture this. It's 1 year from today. You're unrecognizable. You've built the habits. You've hit the goals. You've become the person you knew you could be. The only difference between those two futures is the decision you make right now. Are you going to keep waiting for ready? Or are you going to move? Because here's the thing about forcing yourself into discipline. It's not about a single heroic moment. It's about the accumulation of decisions that seem small but compound into transformation. And the first decision, the one that changes everything, is refusing to wait another day. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to start. And starting, no matter how messy, is infinitely more powerful than waiting for perfect. So what's it going to be?
Chapter 3. When your brain becomes your enemy. Your brain is trying to kill your future. Not because it hates you, but because it loves you. Or at least, it loves the version of you that's still breathing, the version that's safe, the version that doesn't take risks. And that love, it's suffocating you. Every time you set a goal, your brain immediately begins constructing reasons why you shouldn't pursue it. It's not being pessimistic, it's being protective. Because to your brain, change equals danger, and danger equals death. This is your amygdala talking, the ancient part of your brain that kept your ancestors alive when saber-toothed tigers were a legitimate concern. It's hardwired to scan for threats. And in the modern world, those threats aren't predators, they're possibilities. The possibility of failure, the possibility of embarrassment, the possibility of discovering you're not who you thought you were. So your brain does what it does best. It protects you. It whispers doubt. It manufactures excuses. It creates elaborate stories about why now isn't the right time, why you're not the right person, why this particular goal isn't really what you want anyway. And you listen, because it sounds like you. It sounds like reason. But it's not reason. It's resistance. Dr. Stephen Pressfield calls it the resistance, that invisible force that shows up the moment you try to do something meaningful. It's the voice that says, just one more episode when you should be working. It's the sudden urge to reorganize your closet when you should be making that phone call. It's the phantom exhaustion that appears the second you think about going to the gym. The resistance is real, and it's operating in your brain right now, reading these words, trying to find a way to discredit them so you can go back to comfortable. Here's what makes this so insidious. Your brain doesn't just resist action, it makes you believe the resistance is your authentic self. You think, I'm just not a morning person. No, your brain has convinced you that sleeping in is your identity, when really it's just a habit you've reinforced. You think, I'm not good with money. No, your brain has labeled financial discipline as a threat to your immediate comfort, so it's created a story that protects you from having to change. You think, I've tried before and failed, so this won't work either. No, your brain is using past data to predict future outcomes, completely ignoring the fact that you're a different person now, in a different moment, with different information. Your brain is a prediction machine, and it's predicting your failure before you even begin. But here's the beautiful, terrible truth. You can overwrite it. Neuroscientists call it neuroplasticity. Your brain isn't fixed, it's not permanent. Every single thought you think, every action you take is literally reshaping the neural pathways in your brain. Right now, you have pathways that lead to scrolling instead of starting, to procrastinating instead of producing, to comfort instead of growth. Those pathways are deep, they're well-worn, they're highways. But you can build new pathways. And every time you choose the harder action over the easier one, you're paving a new road. At first, it's just a dirt path, easy to abandon, easy to lose. But with repetition, it becomes a highway too. And one day, discipline becomes the default, not because you found willpower, but because you've rewired your brain. Let me show you how this works in real time. Right now, there's something you know you should do today. Something small but meaningful. Maybe it's drinking water instead of soda. Maybe it's writing one paragraph. Maybe it's doing 10 push-ups. Your brain is already generating resistance. It's saying, yeah, but you're reading right now. You'll do it later. Or, it's such a small thing, it doesn't really matter. Or, you're tired. Do it tomorrow when you have more energy. That's the enemy talking. And here's the critical moment. You have about 3 seconds to act before the resistance wins. 3 seconds. Researchers at the University of California discovered that there's a tiny window between impulse and action. In that window, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and self-control, can override your amygdala. But only if you move fast. If you hesitate, if you negotiate, if you think about it too long, the amygdala wins, the resistance wins, and you stay exactly where you are. This is why discipline isn't about motivation. It's about speed. The moment you think of the right action, you take it. No debate, no negotiation, no waiting for the feeling to match the decision. You just move. And in that movement, you're not just accomplishing a task. You're training your brain that you are no longer controlled by comfort. You're teaching your nervous system a new truth. Action comes first. Feeling follows. This is the discipline of the 3-second rule. And it's how you turn your brain from enemy to ally. Because here's what happens when you consistently act within that 3-second window. Your brain starts to adapt. The resistance gets quieter. The excuses get weaker. And the path of action becomes familiar. And eventually, the thing that used to require force becomes automatic. But you have to understand, your brain will fight you every step of the way. It will get creative. It will disguise resistance as logic. It will tell you that pushing yourself is unhealthy, that you're being too hard on yourself, that balance is important. And balance is important. But what you call balance is often just another word for staying small. Real balance doesn't mean avoiding discomfort. It means choosing which discomfort serves your future. The discomfort of discipline, that serves you. The discomfort of regret, that destroys you. Your brain doesn't know the difference. It just knows discomfort equals bad. So it tries to steer you away from both. But you're smarter than your brain. You can see the long game. You can recognize the difference between pain that breaks you and pain that builds you. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you're programming your brain for mediocrity. Every time you choose action over excuse, you're programming your brain for excellence. It's that simple and that hard. So here's your mission. For the next 24 hours, practice the 3-second rule. The moment you think of something you should do, move. Don't think. Don't negotiate. Just act. Watch what happens. Watch how your brain scrambles to stop you. Watch how it conjures reasons and distractions and sudden urgent needs. And watch yourself act anyway. Because the moment you prove to your brain that you're in control, everything changes. You stop being a passenger in your own life. You stop waiting for permission from your own mind. You become the force that reshapes your reality. And your brain? It has no choice but to follow.
Chapter 4. The Architecture of Inevitable Action. Let's talk about the biggest lie in self-help, that discipline is about willpower. It's not. Willpower is what you use when your system fails. It's the emergency brake. And if you're relying on it every single day, multiple times a day, you're going to crash. Because willpower depletes. Research out of Stanford shows that self-control is like a muscle. It fatigues with use. Every decision you make, every temptation you resist, drains the tank a little more. By the end of the day, you're running on empty. That's why you can resist the donuts at breakfast but demolish a pint of ice cream at midnight. That's why you're productive in the morning and scrolling by evening. That's why your discipline evaporates right when you need it most. You've been fighting a battle you can't win, and you've been blaming yourself for losing. But the problem isn't you. The problem is that you're trying to rely on willpower when you should be building systems. Disciplined people aren't more disciplined than you. They've just designed their lives so that discipline is automatic. They don't resist temptation. They eliminate it. They don't force themselves to work out. They make it easier to work out than not to. They don't fight their brain. They design around it. This is the architecture of inevitable action, and it's the only way to create lasting change. Let me show you what this looks like. You want to wake up early, but every morning your alarm goes off and you hit snooze. You tell yourself you lack discipline. You hate yourself a little more each day. But the problem isn't discipline. The problem is that your phone is next to your bed. The snooze button is within arm's reach, and your half-asleep brain is making the decision, not your conscious, committed self. The architecture is broken. Now, imagine this. Your phone is across the room. To turn off the alarm, you have to stand up. And once you're standing, you've already won. Because the hardest part of waking up isn't getting out of bed. It's deciding to get out of bed. Once you're vertical, momentum takes over. Same goal, different architecture. Inevitable action. This is how you force discipline. You remove the decision from your tired, resistant, comfort-seeking brain. You build a structure that makes the right choice the easy choice. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, calls this environment design. You're not changing yourself, you're changing your environment so that your environment changes you. You want to eat healthier? Don't keep junk food in the house. You can't eat what you don't have. Willpower isn't required when temptation doesn't exist. You want to read more? Put the book on your pillow in the morning. When you go to bed at night, it's already there. The barrier to entry is zero. You want to stop wasting hours on social media? Delete the apps. Force yourself to log in through a browser every time. Add friction to the bad habit. Remove friction from the good one. The architecture of inevitable action has 3 core principles. Listen carefully, because this is where theory becomes transformation. Principle 1. Reduce activation energy. Every action has a cost. Not money, energy. The amount of effort required to start. The fewer steps between you and the action, the more likely you are to do it. If going to the gym requires you to find your gym bag, pack your clothes, drive 15 minutes, find parking, and then work out, that's high activation energy. On a tough day, you're not going. Your brain will find an excuse. But if you work out at home and your workout clothes are laid out the night before, and all you have to do is roll out of bed and press play on a video, that's low activation energy. Even on a tough day, you'll probably do it. Same action, different architecture. Principle 2.
Build choice architecture. You make thousands of decisions every day, and every decision drains you. So the goal is to eliminate decisions wherever possible. Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day, not because he lacked style, but because he understood that decision fatigue is real. One less decision preserved his mental energy for things that mattered. You should do the same. Automate everything you can. Meal prep on Sundays, so you're not deciding what to eat every night. Plan your week in advance, so you're not deciding what to work on every morning. Create routines so that your day runs on autopilot, freeing your willpower for the moments that truly require it. When discipline is systematic, it doesn't feel like discipline. It feels like Tuesday. Principle 3. Create point of no return triggers. This is the most powerful one. A point of no return trigger is an action so small, so simple, that once you do it, the rest becomes inevitable. You want to write every day? The trigger isn't write 1,000 words. That's overwhelming. The trigger is open the document. Once it's open, you'll write something. Maybe not 1,000 words, maybe just one sentence. But one sentence is infinitely more than 0. You want to exercise daily? The trigger isn't do a full workout. It's put on workout clothes. Once they're on, you're probably going to move. The genius of the point of no return trigger is that it removes the mountain and shows you the first step. And the first step is never as hard as you think. You're not trying to build discipline. You're trying to build momentum. And momentum doesn't require force. It requires a starting point. Here's the brutal honesty you need to hear. If your environment isn't set up for success, you will fail. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. And humans don't operate on willpower. We operate on systems. Right now, look at your life. Look at your environment. Is it designed for the person you want to become? Or is it optimized for the person you're trying to leave behind? If your kitchen is full of junk food, you're designing for comfort. If your phone is the first thing you see in the morning, you're designing for distraction. If your workspace is cluttered and chaotic, you're designing for procrastination. You can't hate yourself into discipline. You can't willpower your way into transformation. But you can architect your life so that the right actions become inevitable. And when action is inevitable, discipline becomes effortless. This is the shift. This is the moment where you stop fighting yourself and start designing for yourself. You're not broken. Your system is. Fix the system and you fix your life.
Chapter 5. Breaking the identity you're addicted to. You're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of success. Because success means you have to let go of the identity you've been clinging to, the story you've been telling yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. And that story? You're addicted to it. You say you want to change. You say you want discipline. You say you want to transform your life 360 degrees. But deep down, there's a part of you that doesn't. Because the current version of you, the undisciplined version, the inconsistent version, the version that starts strong and fades fast, is familiar. And familiar feels safe, even when it's slowly destroying you. Here's what nobody talks about. Your brain doesn't just resist change because change is hard. Your brain resists change because change threatens your sense of self. Psychologists call this the self-concept. It's the collection of beliefs you hold about who you are. And your brain will do everything in its power to make your behavior match your self-concept, even when that self-concept is limiting you. You believe you're not a morning person, so you hit snooze. You believe you're bad with money, so you overspend. You believe you're not the type to work out, so you skip the gym. And every time you act in alignment with that limiting identity, you reinforce it. You collect evidence. You build a case against yourself. And your brain says, see, this is who you are. Stop trying to be someone you're not. But here's the truth. That identity isn't real. It's just a story you've been telling yourself so long, you've started to believe it's fact. And the moment you realize it's fiction, everything changes. Let me tell you about Sarah, 34 years old, overweight her entire adult life. She tried every diet, every workout program, every motivational trick in the book. And every time, she failed. Not because the program didn't work, but because deep down, she identified as someone who can't lose weight. That was her story. And her behavior followed her story. Until one day, she had a realization. She wasn't failing because she lacked discipline. She was failing because she was trying to force a behavior that contradicted her identity. So she stopped trying to lose weight, and she started trying to become an athlete. Not because she was athletic, but because athlete was a different identity, and different identities demand different behaviors. An athlete doesn't skip workouts, not because they have more willpower, but because skipping workouts would mean they're not an athlete, and the identity comes first. Within 6 months, Sarah had lost 40 pounds. Not through discipline, through identity shift. She stopped asking, "What should I do?" and started asking, "What would an athlete do?" And her brain, desperate to maintain consistency between her self-concept and her behavior, made it happen. This is the secret that disciplined people know. You don't change your behavior and then change your identity. You change your identity and your behavior follows. Right now, you're trying to force discipline on top of an identity that doesn't support it. You're trying to be productive while still identifying as someone who just loves food too much. And it's not working because identity always wins. So the question isn't, how do I get more disciplined? The question is, who do I need to become for discipline to be natural? And the answer to that question is uncomfortable because it requires you to kill the old identity, to grieve it, to let it go. You've been that person for so long. You've built relationships around that person. You've made jokes about that person. You've used that person as an excuse for why you can't, why you won't, why it's just not who you are. And now, you have to let them die. That's the real resistance. Not the work itself, but the identity death that comes before it.
Here's how this plays out in real life. You decide you want to be someone who reads, but you currently identify as not a reader. Maybe a teacher once told you that you were slow. Maybe you just never built the habit. Doesn't matter. The identity is set. So you buy books, you set goals, you tell yourself you'll read 30 minutes a day. And you don't, because not a reader doesn't read. And your brain is desperately trying to keep your behavior aligned with your identity. But what if you changed the identity first? What if you started telling yourself, I'm someone who reads? Not, I'm trying to read more. Not, I want to be a reader. But, I am a reader. Your brain hears that, and it says, okay, if we're a reader, we need to act like one. So you read one page, just one, and your brain says, see? Evidence, we're a reader. And the next day you read 2 pages, more evidence. And slowly, imperceptibly, the identity becomes real. Not because you forced the behavior, but because you claimed the identity and the behavior followed. This is identity-based discipline, and it's the only kind that lasts. Because motivation fades, willpower depletes, but identity is permanent. Or at least it feels permanent. And that feeling is enough to drive consistent action. Let's get brutally honest for a second. What's the identity you're addicted to? Maybe it's the busy person who never has time. That identity protects you from having to prioritize. It gives you an excuse for why you're not further along. Maybe it's the creative who works best under pressure. That identity protects you from having to develop discipline. It romanticizes your procrastination. Maybe it's the person who's tried everything and nothing works. That identity protects you from having to try again. It shields you from the vulnerability of hope. Whatever it is, it's costing you your future. And the only way forward is to let it go. Not gradually, not gently, but completely. You have to make a decision right now, in this moment, that the old identity is dead, that the story you've been telling about who you are is no longer true. And you have to claim a new one. Not the person you want to be, the person you are. Present tense, non-negotiable. I am disciplined. Not I'm working on being disciplined. Not I'm trying to be more disciplined. I am disciplined. Your brain will resist. It will scream that you're lying to yourself. It will point to every past failure as evidence that you're not. Ignore it. Because identity isn't about past evidence. It's about future direction. And every action you take from this identity reinforces it. Every disciplined choice is proof. Every moment you show up is evidence. You're not faking it till you make it. You're claiming it until it becomes undeniable. And here's the beautiful part. It doesn't take long. Research shows that it takes about 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic. 66 days of acting from your new identity and your brain stops fighting it. 66 days and discipline stops feeling like force. 66 days and the new you becomes the real you. But you have to start. You have to claim it. You have to kill the old identity and step into the new one. Even when it feels like you're lying to yourself. Even when it feels impossible. Even when every fiber of your being wants to retreat to the familiar. Because the familiar is killing you. And the unfamiliar is where your future lives. So who are you? Not who were you. Not who do you want to be. Who are you right now in this moment as you make the decision to change everything? Say it out loud. Say it like you mean it. Say it until your brain has no choice but to believe it. And then act like it's true. Because the moment you do, it becomes true. Chapter 6. The currency of micro-decisions. Your life is not shaped by your goals. It's shaped by your decisions. Specifically, the tiny, seemingly insignificant decisions you make 100 times a day. The decision to get up or hit snooze. The decision to drink water or reach for soda. The decision to take the stairs or the elevator. The decision to check your phone or start your work. You think these don't matter. You think they're too small to count. But they're everything. Because your life right now, your body, your bank account, your relationships, your career, is the sum total of thousands of micro decisions you've made over the past year, 5 years, 10 years. And if you don't like where you are, it's because you've been making the wrong micro decisions. Not catastrophically wrong, just slightly wrong, consistently wrong. And slight, consistent errors compound into massive deviation. There's a concept in aviation called the 1-degree error. If a plane takes off from Los Angeles headed to New York, but the trajectory is off by just 1 degree, the plane will miss New York by miles. 1 degree doesn't sound like much, but over the course of thousands of miles, 1 degree is the difference between landing on target and ending up in the Atlantic. Your life works the same way. Every micro decision is a 1-degree shift. And over time, those shifts determine your destination. Right now, you're on a trajectory based on the micro decisions you're making today. You're heading toward a specific future. Maybe it's the future you want. But probably, if you're being honest, it's not. And the reason it's not is because you've been treating micro decisions like they're optional, like they're neutral. But they're not. Every decision is a vote for the person you're becoming. You hit snooze, that's a vote for the undisciplined version of you. You skip the workout, that's a vote for the out-of-shape version of you. You choose scrolling over reading, that's a vote for the distracted version of you. And the version with the most votes wins. This is identity reinforcement in action. Every micro decision either strengthens the identity you want or the identity you're trying to escape. And here's the brutal part. You can't afford to dismiss the small decisions because the small decisions are the only decisions that matter. You're never going to have one massive moment that changes everything. There's no single workout that transforms your body, no single dollar that makes you rich, no single conversation that fixes your relationships. Transformation doesn't happen in the big moments. It happens in the accumulation of the small ones. Researchers at Duke University found that 40% of your daily actions aren't conscious decisions, they're habits, which means that nearly half of what you do every day is on autopilot. And if your autopilot is set to the wrong destination, you're going to keep ending up in the wrong place, no matter how much you consciously want to change. So the question becomes, how do you take control of the micro decisions? How do you make the right choice consistently, even when it doesn't feel like it matters? The answer is deceptively simple. You make the decision once, and then you automate it. Let me explain. Right now, every morning you're making the decision whether to work out. That's a mistake, because your brain, in the moment, will always find a reason not to. You're tired, you're busy, you'll do it later, you deserve a break. The decision in the moment is always influenced by how you feel, and feelings are unreliable. But if you make the decision once, I work out every morning at 6, then there is no decision to make. It's already decided. You're just executing. This is the power of rules. Rules eliminate the micro decision. They remove the negotiation. They take your unreliable, comfort-seeking brain out of the equation.
You don't decide whether to brush your teeth every morning. You just do it. It's a rule. It's non-negotiable. Discipline works the same way. You need to create rules for the micro decisions that shape your life. Not guidelines, not suggestions, rules. I don't eat after 8 p.m. Not I try not to eat after 8, not I shouldn't eat after 8, I don't. Period. I work out 5 days a week. Not I try to work out, not I work out when I can, 5 days, non-negotiable. I read for 30 minutes before bed. Not I'll read if I have time, not I want to read more, 30 minutes every night. When you create rules, you eliminate the decision fatigue. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop wasting mental energy debating whether today is the day you break the streak. You just follow the rule. And here's what happens. After a while, the rule becomes who you are. The micro decision becomes automatic, and what once required discipline now requires nothing. It's just what you do. But here's the critical part. The rule only works if it's clear and non-negotiable. Vague intentions don't work. I'll try to eat healthier isn't a rule, it's a wish. And wishes don't change behavior. I eat vegetables with every meal is a rule. It's clear, it's measurable, it's executable. You need to audit your life right now and identify the micro decisions that are costing you your future. What are the small daily choices that are keeping you stuck? Maybe it's checking your phone first thing in the morning. Maybe it's skipping breakfast. Maybe it's saying yes to things you should say no to. Whatever it is, create a rule. Make the decision once and then stop deciding. Because every time you redecide, you give your brain an opportunity to choose comfort. And your brain will choose comfort every single time unless you remove the choice. Let me give you a real-world example. There's a guy named David. He wanted to lose weight. He tried everything. Diets, trainers, apps. Nothing stuck. Then he created one rule. I don't drink calories. That's it. No soda, no juice, no fancy coffee drinks. Just water, black coffee, and tea. He didn't count calories. He didn't restrict food. He just followed the one rule. In 6 months, he lost 30 pounds. Not because the rule was magic, but because the rule eliminated hundreds of micro-decisions that were sabotaging him. Every time he was thirsty, he didn't debate. He didn't negotiate. He just drank water, because that was the rule. And the compound effect of that one micro-decision, repeated thousands of times, transformed his body. This is the currency of micro-decisions. Small, consistent, compounding. You don't need a complete overhaul. You don't need to change everything at once. You just need to identify the 1 or 2 micro-decisions that matter most, turn them into rules, and let the compound effect do the work. Because discipline isn't about perfection. It's about precision. It's about knowing which micro-decisions move you forward and which ones keep you stuck. And once you know, you stop treating them like they're optional. You make the decision once, you create the rule, and you let automation take over. Every micro-decision is a vote, and you're voting for your future, one small choice at a time. So here's your assignment. Identify one micro-decision that's sabotaging you. Just one. Turn it into a rule, make it clear, make it non-negotiable, and for the next 7 days, follow it. No exceptions, no negotiations. Watch what happens. Watch how one rule creates clarity, how clarity creates momentum, how momentum creates transformation. Because your life isn't changed by dramatic gestures. It's changed by the relentless accumulation of right choices. And those choices, they start now.
Chapter 7. Burning the escape routes. You keep building exit doors. Every time you commit to something, a goal, a habit, a transformation, you secretly construct an escape route, a way out, a justification for quitting when things get hard. I'll try this, but if it doesn't work in 2 weeks, I'll stop. I'll commit to this unless something comes up. I'll do this, but only if I feel motivated. You think you're being realistic. You think you're protecting yourself from disappointment, but you're not. You're guaranteeing failure. Because the moment you build an escape route, your brain knows it's there. And when the discomfort hits, and it will hit, your brain will guide you straight to that exit. It's not that you lack discipline, it's that you've designed your commitments with built-in failure mechanisms. And until you burn those escape routes, you'll never discover what you're truly capable of. Let me tell you about Hernán Cortés. In 1519, he landed in Mexico with 600 men planning to conquer the Aztec Empire. The Aztecs had millions of warriors. His men were terrified. They wanted to retreat to the ships. So Cortés did something radical. He burned the ships. No escape, no retreat, no plan B. His men had 2 choices, conquer or die. They conquered. Now, I'm not suggesting you create life or death scenarios, but the principle is everything. When retreat is an option, retreat becomes inevitable. When quitting is possible, quitting becomes probable. When you leave yourself an escape route, you will use it. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is wired to avoid discomfort. And the escape route is the path of least resistance. So if you want real transformation, if you want to force yourself into discipline, you need to eliminate the exits. Here's what this looks like in practice. You want to quit smoking. You could say, I'm going to try to quit. That's an escape route. The word try is permission to fail. Or you could say, I don't smoke anymore. Period. No try. No wiggle room. The identity has shifted and the behavior follows. You throw away the cigarettes. You avoid the places where you used to smoke. You tell everyone you know that you're done. You make it public. You make it permanent. You burn the ships. Now there's social pressure. There's accountability. There's no quiet retreat where you can pretend it never happened. You've committed in a way that makes quitting more painful than continuing. This is the art of burning escape routes. You engineer your commitment so that failure is more uncomfortable than success. Right now, look at your goals. Look at your commitments. How many escape routes have you built? Maybe you're trying to work out. That's an escape route. Trying means you're not committed. You're experimenting. Maybe you're going to see how it goes with that business idea. That's an escape route. See how it goes means you're preparing to quit the moment it gets hard. Maybe you've set a goal, but you haven't told anyone. That's an escape route. If no one knows, no one will notice when you quit. Every single one of these is a trap door, and your brain knows exactly where they are. So here's what you do. You close them, one by one. Escape route number 1, ambiguity. Vague goals are escape routes. I want to get in shape is not a commitment. It's a wish. And wishes evaporate under pressure. I will work out 5 days a week at 6 a.m. is a commitment. It's specific, it's measurable, it's undeniable.
When your goal is vague, you can always claim you're making progress, even when you're not. When your goal is specific, there's no hiding. Burn the ambiguity. Make it clear. Escape route number 2, privacy. Secret goals are escape routes. When no one knows what you're trying to do, you're the only one who knows when you quit. Make it public. Tell your partner. Tell your friends. Post it on social media if you have to. The moment you make it public, you create accountability. And accountability is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Studies show that people who share their goals with others are 33% more likely to achieve them. Not because telling people gives you magical powers, but because it removes the escape route of silent retreat. Escape route number 3, Plan B. Backup plans are escape routes. They sound smart, they sound responsible, but they're sabotage in disguise. When you have a Plan B, you don't fully commit to Plan A. You hedge, you hold back. You keep one foot in the old life while trying to build the new one. And you can't transform with one foot in the past. I'm not saying you should be reckless. I'm saying you should be fully committed. If you're going to start a business, don't keep the safety of your 9-to-5 as a backup. Save money, plan your transition, but when you jump, jump completely. If you're going to change your life, don't keep the option to return to the old version. Burn the bridge. Make the new life the only option. Escape route number 4, the I'll start over mentality. This is the sneakiest escape route. You tell yourself, if I mess up, I'll just start over on Monday. Monday becomes the eternal reset button, and you give yourself permission to fail because you know you can always start fresh. But Monday never comes, because every time you fail, you push the reset button, and the cycle continues. Here's the truth. There is no starting over. There's only continuing. You don't need a fresh start. You need to keep going from exactly where you are right now, even if where you are is messy and imperfect. The moment you eliminate the start over option, you stop treating failure as a full reset. You treat it as a data point. You adjust, you continue. You don't go back to square one, you go to square 2. And that shift from restart to continue changes everything. Let me show you what happens when you burn the escape routes. You join a gym and pay for a full year upfront, non-refundable. Now you have skin in the game. Skipping workouts costs you real money. The escape route is closed. You sign up for a race 6 months from now. You tell everyone you're running it. You register publicly. Now quitting isn't just disappointing yourself, it's backing out of a public commitment. The escape route is closed. You delete social media from your phone. Not just log out. Delete. Now the barrier to mindless scrolling is high enough that you'll actually think before reinstalling. The escape route is closed. See the pattern? You're not relying on willpower. You're engineering commitment. You're making the cost of quitting higher than the cost of continuing. And when quitting is expensive, discipline becomes cheap. This is what separates the people who transform from the people who try. The people who transform don't have more willpower. They've just made retreat impossible. They've burned the ships. And once the ships are burned, there's a strange thing that happens. You stop wasting energy wondering if you should quit. You stop debating whether today is the day you give up, because it's not an option. And all that mental energy you were spending on negotiating with yourself, it gets redirected into action. You stop thinking about whether you'll work out. You just work out, because what else are you going to do? The escape route is gone. This is the freedom that comes from burning the exits. It sounds like restriction, but it's liberation. Because the prison isn't commitment. The prison is the constant internal debate, the endless negotiation, the perpetual wondering if you're going to follow through. When you burn the escape route, you end the debate. You close the negotiation. You commit completely. And commitment, real commitment, is terrifying. But it's also the only way forward. So here's what you need to do right now. Identify your biggest escape route. The one you've been keeping open just in case. The one that lets you quit when things get uncomfortable. And burn it. Make your goal public. Eliminate the backup plan. Remove the ambiguity. Delete the reset button. Make continuing the only option. Because you don't need an escape route. You need a point of no return. And the moment you cross it, everything changes.
Chapter 8. The Discipline of Brutal Honesty. You're lying to yourself. Not maliciously, not consciously, but constantly. You're telling yourself stories that sound true, but keep you stuck. Stories that protect your ego, but destroy your progress. I don't have time. Lie. You have time. You're just spending it on things that don't matter. I'll do it tomorrow. Lie. Tomorrow you'll have the same excuses you have today. I'm doing my best. Lie. Your best would require discomfort you're not willing to endure. These aren't deliberate deceptions. They're defense mechanisms. Your brain creates them to protect you from the pain of confronting reality. But they're killing you softly, because you can't change what you won't acknowledge, and you won't acknowledge what you're too afraid to see. This is where most people fail, not in execution, but in honesty. They look at their life through a filter of justification. They highlight the effort and hide the results. They focus on intention and ignore impact, and they wonder why nothing changes. Real discipline, the kind that transforms your life 360 degrees, starts with brutal honesty. Not the kind of honesty where you beat yourself up, but the kind where you see yourself clearly, without the stories, without the excuses, without the softening, just the raw truth. Let me show you what this looks like. You say you want to lose weight, but when you're brutally honest, you admit you're not willing to give up the late-night snacks. You're not willing to meal prep. You're not willing to feel hungry. You want the result, but you don't want the process. That's the truth. And until you admit it, you'll keep spinning your wheels, blaming genetics or metabolism or stress, when the real problem is that you're not willing to do what's required. You say you want to build a business, but when you're brutally honest, you admit you're spending 3 hours a day on social media and 30 minutes on your business. You want the identity of an entrepreneur, but you don't want the sacrifice of building. That's the truth. And until you admit it, you'll keep telling yourself you're working on it, when really, you're just thinking about it. You say you want better relationships, but when you're brutally honest, you admit you're not willing to have the hard conversations. You're not willing to be vulnerable. You're not willing to change your behavior. You want people to be different, but you don't want to be different yourself. That's the truth. And until you admit it,
You'll keep blaming others for dynamics you're perpetuating. This is the discipline of brutal honesty, admitting what you're actually willing to do versus what you say you want. Because the gap between those two things is where all your frustration lives. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, the discomfort that comes from holding two conflicting beliefs. You believe you want to change, but your actions prove otherwise. And instead of resolving the dissonance by changing your actions, you resolve it by lying to yourself about your level of commitment. You lower the standard. You redefine success. You move the goalposts. You say, I'm doing pretty good considering how busy I am. But you're not doing good. You're doing the minimum. And the minimum keeps you where you are. Here's the hard part. Brutal honesty requires you to stop being the hero of your own story. You've been narrating your life like you're the protagonist, overcoming insurmountable obstacles. And sure, life is hard. But in your narrative, you've made yourself the victim of circumstances rather than the creator of outcomes. You tell yourself you can't because of your job, your family, your past, your resources. And all of those things are real, but they're not the reason you're stuck. You're stuck because you're using them as reasons instead of obstacles to navigate. Brutal honesty means admitting, I could do this. I'm choosing not to. That sentence is terrifying because it removes the comfort of victimhood. It removes the excuse. It puts the responsibility squarely on you. But it's also liberating because if you're the problem, you're also the solution.
Let me give you a framework for practicing brutal honesty. It's simple, it's uncomfortable, but it works. Every week, ask yourself 3 questions and answer them without filtering, without softening, without justifying. Question 1. What did I say I would do this week and what did I actually do? Write down both lists, side by side. Look at the gap. That gap is your honesty deficit. That's where the lies live. If you said you'd work out 5 times and you worked out twice, don't tell yourself, well, I had a busy week. Just see the gap. Acknowledge it. Question 2. What am I pretending not to know? This is the killer question because there's always something you know but refuse to acknowledge. You know you're eating too much. You know you're wasting time. You know that relationship is toxic. You know you're not trying as hard as you could be. You know. But you're pretending you don't, because knowing means you have to act. Write down what you're pretending not to know, and then sit with the discomfort of seeing it. Question 3. If I were being completely honest, what would I have to change? This is where honesty becomes action. Because brutal honesty without change is just self-awareness, and self-awareness without action is just sophisticated procrastination. What would have to change if you stopped lying to yourself? Maybe you'd have to wake up earlier. Maybe you'd have to end a friendship. Maybe you'd have to admit you're scared. Whatever it is, write it down. And then do it. Here's what happens when you practice brutal honesty. Your tolerance for bullshit evaporates. You stop lying to yourself, which means you stop tolerating lies from others. You stop accepting mediocrity from yourself, which means you stop accepting it in your environment. Your standards rise. Not because you're being harsh, but because you're being real. And reality, when you stop filtering it, demands more from you. There's a concept in recovery programs called rigorous honesty. It's the foundation of transformation, because you can't recover from something you won't admit you have. Same applies to discipline. You can't become disciplined while lying to yourself about your current level of discipline. You have to see it clearly. The missed workouts, the wasted hours, the broken promises to yourself. Not to shame yourself, but to know where you actually are. Because you can't navigate to a destination if you're lying about your starting point. Let me be brutally honest with you right now. If your life isn't where you want it to be, it's because you've been dishonest about what you're willing to do to change it. You've said you want transformation, but you've been unwilling to endure discomfort. You've said you want discipline, but you've been negotiating with yourself at every turn. You've said you want a new life, but you've been clinging to the habits of the old one. That's not judgment. That's just truth. And the beautiful thing about truth is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. So right now, in this moment, stop lying. Stop telling yourself you don't have time. You have 24 hours a day, same as everyone else. You're choosing to spend them differently. Stop telling yourself you'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow isn't real. There's only now. Stop telling yourself you're trying. Trying is what you do when you're preparing to fail. Doing is what you do when you're committed. Be brutally honest about where you are, about what you're doing, and about what you're willing to change. And then act from that honesty. Because discipline without honesty is just performance. You're going through the motions, but you're not transforming. But honesty with discipline, that's unstoppable. That's when you stop pretending and start becoming.
Love what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and join our community of audiobook lovers. Your support helps us bring you more amazing stories.
Chapter 9. Rewiring the Reward System. Your brain is a drug dealer, and it's got you hooked on the wrong substance. Every time you check your phone, you get a hit of dopamine. Every time you scroll through social media, you get a hit. Every time you binge that show instead of doing the work, you get a hit. Your brain has learned that instant gratification feels good, and it's built a reward system around behaviors that give you immediate pleasure with zero effort. The problem? Real achievement doesn't work that way. Real achievement requires delayed gratification. It requires you to work for weeks, months, sometimes years before you see results. And your brain, hooked on instant hits, can't tolerate the wait. So you quit. Not because you lack discipline, but because your reward system is broken. You've been training your brain to expect immediate payoff. And when you try to do something meaningful, something that requires sustained effort with no immediate reward, your brain throws a tantrum. It says, "This isn't fun. This doesn't feel good. Why are we doing this?" And you listen. You stop. You go back to the easy dopamine. But here's the truth. You can rewire the system. You can retrain your brain to find pleasure in discipline instead of distraction. It's not easy, but it's possible. And it starts with understanding how your brain actually works. Dopamine isn't a reward chemical. It's an anticipation chemical. Your brain releases it when it expects a reward, not when it receives one. That's why scrolling is so addictive. Every swipe, every refresh, your brain is anticipating something interesting. It rarely delivers, but the anticipation keeps you hooked. That's why gambling is addictive. It's not the winning, it's the possibility of winning. Your brain is wired to chase potential rewards, and modern technology has hijacked that system, giving you infinite potential rewards with minimal effort. But you can use this same mechanism to your advantage. You can train your brain to anticipate the reward of completing a workout, of finishing a project, of hitting a goal. You just have to rebuild the association. Here's how. Step 1. Celebrate the small wins. Right now, you only celebrate the big achievements, the promotion, the 10-pound weight loss, the finished project. But those are too far away. Your brain needs more immediate feedback. So you need to celebrate the small wins. And I mean small. You did one push-up? Celebrate it. You wrote one paragraph? Celebrate it. You resisted checking your phone for 30 minutes? Celebrate it. Not with food, not with scrolling, but with acknowledgement. Literally say out loud, I did that. That was discipline. It sounds ridiculous, but it works. Because you're teaching your brain that discipline feels good. You're creating a dopamine association with the behavior you want to reinforce. B.J. Fogg, a behavior scientist at Stanford, calls this the celebration effect. When you celebrate a behavior immediately after doing it, your brain releases dopamine and associates that feeling with the action. Over time, the action itself becomes rewarding. You don't have to wait for the six-pack to feel good about working out. You feel good about the workout itself. And when the behavior becomes its own reward, discipline becomes automatic. Step 2. Remove the competing rewards. You're trying to build new dopamine pathways while your brain is flooded with easy dopamine from social media, Netflix, junk food, and whatever else you use to escape. It's like trying to hear a whisper at a rock concert. You need to lower the volume on the easy rewards so your brain can actually register the deeper ones. This doesn't mean you eliminate all pleasure. It means you eliminate the cheap, artificial dopamine that's drowning out everything else. Delete the apps that give you instant gratification with zero effort. Reduce the sugar that spikes your dopamine and crashes your energy. Turn off the notifications that hijack your attention every 5 minutes. Create space for your brain to recalibrate.
When you remove the constant flood of cheap dopamine, your brain becomes more sensitive to natural rewards. The satisfaction of completing a task, the pride of showing up, the quiet confidence of keeping a promise to yourself. These things always felt good. You just couldn't feel them over the noise. Step 3. Link discipline to identity. Remember what we talked about in Chapter 5? Identity drives behavior. If you see yourself as someone who works out, working out feels rewarding. Not because the workout itself is always fun, but because it reinforces who you are. And your brain loves identity confirmation. It releases dopamine when you act in alignment with your self-concept. So when you work out, don't just think, I'm exercising. Think, I'm someone who takes care of their body. When you resist the distraction, don't just think, I didn't check my phone. Think, I'm someone who controls their attention. Every disciplined action becomes evidence of your identity, and your brain rewards you for being consistent with who you are. This is how you make discipline feel good, not because you're tricking yourself, but because you're aligning your actions with your identity, and that alignment is inherently rewarding. Step 4. Delay the alternative reward. Here's a hack that works surprisingly well. When you're tempted to choose the easy option, don't tell yourself you can't have it. Tell yourself you can have it in 15 minutes. You want to scroll? Fine, in 15 minutes. You want to skip the workout? Fine, but first, just put on your workout clothes. Then you can skip it. What happens is this. Your brain calms down. It's not being denied, it's just being delayed. And in those 15 minutes, the craving often passes, or you've already started the productive behavior and momentum takes over. You're not fighting your brain, you're negotiating with it. And over time, you're training it to tolerate delay. You're building the capacity for delayed gratification, which is the foundation of every meaningful achievement. Step 5. Stack pleasure with discipline. You don't have to make discipline miserable. You can intentionally pair it with something you enjoy. Listen to your favorite podcast only while you work out. Drink your favorite coffee only while you do deep work. Watch that show only while you meal prep. You're creating a dopamine bridge. Your brain starts associating the disciplined behavior with the pleasurable reward. And over time, the disciplined behavior becomes pleasurable. This is called temptation bundling, and research out of the University of Pennsylvania shows it's incredibly effective at building habits. You're not eliminating pleasure. You're strategically deploying it to reinforce the behaviors that serve you. Let me give you a real example. There's a woman named Jessica who hated running, hated it, but she knew it was good for her and she wanted to build the habit. So she created a rule. She could only listen to her favorite true crime podcast while running. Suddenly, running wasn't just exercise. It was the gateway to something she loved. Within a month, she was running 4 times a week. Not because she suddenly loved running, but because her brain associated running with the pleasure of the podcast. Eventually, the running itself became rewarding. The endorphins, the sense of accomplishment, the identity of being a runner. But it started with a bridge, a connection between the hard thing and the pleasurable thing. You can do the same. Here's the truth about rewiring your reward system. It takes time. Your brain has spent years, maybe decades, getting hooked on instant gratification. You're not going to undo that in a week. But you don't need to. You just need to start building the new pathways. One celebration at a time. One delayed gratification at a time. One identity-aligned action at a time. And slowly, imperceptibly, your brain starts to change. The things that used to feel like punishment start to feel like progress. The things that used to require force start to require nothing. And discipline stops being something you force. It becomes something you crave. Because your brain has finally learned what real reward feels like. Not the cheap hit of a notification, not the empty pleasure of a scroll, but the deep, lasting satisfaction of becoming who you said you'd be.
Chapter 10. The Power of Calculated Suffering. You've been avoiding pain your entire life, and that avoidance is exactly what's keeping you weak. Because here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Growth requires suffering. Not the pointless suffering of self-sabotage or victimhood, but calculated suffering, intentional discomfort, the kind you choose because you know what's on the other side. Every meaningful transformation in your life has come through pain. The pain of pushing past your limits, the pain of confronting uncomfortable truths, the pain of doing what you didn't want to do. And every time you've avoided that pain, you've stayed exactly where you are. Right now, you're spending all your energy trying to make life comfortable. You're optimizing for ease, for convenience, for the path of least resistance. And you wonder why you're not growing. It's because growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the gap between what you can do and what you're trying to do. That gap is uncomfortable. It's supposed to be. The discomfort is the signal that you're expanding, that you're building capacity, that you're becoming more than you were. But you've been taught to interpret discomfort as a warning, a sign that something's wrong, a signal to stop. So you stop. Every time it gets hard, you retreat. And you tell yourself you're being smart. You're listening to your body. You're practicing self-care. But you're not. You're practicing self-sabotage. Because the difference between productive pain and destructive pain is intention. Destructive pain is random. It's the pain of injury, of burnout, of pushing without purpose. But productive pain, that's different. That's the pain of the workout that builds muscle, the pain of the difficult conversation that deepens connection, the pain of the work that creates value. You know the difference. Your body knows the difference. Productive pain has direction. It's taking you somewhere. And when you're in it, even though it's uncomfortable, there's a sense of rightness. Destructive pain is chaos. It's not building anything. It's just breaking you down. The problem is you've been avoiding both. You've been so afraid of pain that you've eliminated all discomfort from your life. And in doing so, you've eliminated all growth. Let me introduce you to the concept of hormetic stress. In biology,
Hormesis is the idea that small doses of stress actually make organisms stronger. A little bit of poison builds immunity. A little bit of cold strengthens the body. A little bit of fasting triggers cellular repair. The stress in the right dose is the stimulus for adaptation. Your life works the same way. When you lift weights, you're literally tearing your muscle fibers. That's pain. That's damage. But your body responds by rebuilding those fibers stronger than before. The pain is the price of strength. When you fast, your body experiences the stress of not eating. But that stress triggers autophagy, the process where your cells clean out damaged components and regenerate. The discomfort is the catalyst for renewal. When you have a hard conversation, your nervous system floods with anxiety. But pushing through that discomfort deepens trust and builds resilience. The fear is the doorway to connection. You've been running from the very thing that would make you stronger. And until you learn to embrace calculated suffering, to intentionally choose discomfort in service of growth, you'll stay weak. Here's how you start. Identify your growth edge. There's a place in your life right now where you're avoiding discomfort. A conversation you're not having. A workout you're not doing. A project you're not starting. That avoidance is your growth edge. That's where your expansion lives. And you need to walk straight into it. Not recklessly, but intentionally. Ask yourself, what's the discomfort I'm avoiding that if I faced it would change everything? That's your calculated suffering. That's the pain worth choosing. Reframe the discomfort. Your brain interprets discomfort as danger, but you can retrain. When you feel the discomfort of discipline, the early alarm, the hard workout, the boring work, don't label it as bad. Label it as growth. Say to yourself, this is what expansion feels like. This is my body adapting. This is me becoming stronger. The discomfort doesn't go away, but the meaning changes. And meaning is everything. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, wrote that suffering becomes bearable when it has meaning. When you know why you're enduring it, you can endure almost anything. Your suffering right now has meaning. You're building discipline. You're forging a new identity. You're becoming the person who can handle what's coming. That's worth the discomfort. Set a finite boundary. Calculated suffering works because it's bounded. You're not committing to suffering forever. You're committing to suffering for a specific duration. 30 minutes of discomfort, 7 days of a challenge, 66 days of building a habit. Your brain can tolerate discomfort when it knows there's an end point. So when you choose the hard thing, set the boundary. Tell yourself, I'm doing this for 30 days. After that, I can reassess. Almost always, after 30 days, the thing that felt unbearable has become normal. And what was once calculated suffering has become your new baseline. Crack the adaptation. Your body adapts faster than you think, but if you're not paying attention, you won't notice. So track it. Write down how hard the workout feels, how uncomfortable the cold shower is, how difficult the deep work session seems. Then revisit it in a week, 2 weeks, a month. You'll see that what once felt impossible now feels manageable. What once required maximum effort now requires moderate effort. That's adaptation. That's growth. That's proof that the suffering is working. And when you see the proof, it reinforces the behavior. It makes you willing to choose discomfort again because you know it leads somewhere. Let me tell you about Marcus. He was overweight, broke, and miserable.
He wanted to change, but every time he tried, he quit the moment it got uncomfortable. Then he read about David Goggins, the guy who went from obese to ultra-marathon runner by choosing suffering. Marcus decided to try something radical. He chose one hard thing every single day, just one, and he'd do it no matter what. Day 1, he did 50 push-ups. It was agony. Day 2, he took a cold shower. He hated it. Day 3, he woke up at 5 a.m. He was exhausted. But he kept going. One hard thing every day. And something shifted. The hard things started feeling less hard. His capacity expanded. His tolerance for discomfort grew. 6 months later, he'd lost 60 pounds, started a side business, and completely rewired his relationship with pain. Not because he loved suffering, but because he learned that calculated suffering is the price of transformation. And he was finally willing to pay it. Here's what you need to understand. You're either going to suffer the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Both hurt, but only one builds you into something greater. The pain of discipline is temporary. It's acute. It's in the moment and then it passes and you're stronger for it. The pain of regret is permanent. It's chronic. It's the slow ache of knowing you could have been more but chose comfort instead. Which pain do you want to carry? Right now, today, you have the opportunity to choose calculated suffering, to walk into the discomfort you've been avoiding, to have the hard conversation, to do the hard workout, to start the hard project. It won't feel good, not at first, but it will feel right. And 6 months from now, when you look back at this moment, you won't remember the discomfort. You'll only remember that this was the day you stopped running from pain and started using it to build something unbreakable. So choose the suffering that serves you. Embrace the discomfort that expands you. And become the person who doesn't fear hard things because you know hard things are the only things worth doing.
Chapter 11. When motivation dies, systems live.
You're waiting for motivation to strike, like lightning, like inspiration, like some magical force that's going to surge through your body and make the hard things easy. And you're going to be waiting forever because motivation is a liar. It shows up when you don't need it and vanishes the moment you do. Motivation gets you to buy the gym membership, but it's gone by the third workout. Motivation gets you to start the project, but it disappears when the work gets tedious. Motivation gets you excited about change, but it evaporates when change demands sacrifice. You've been taught that motivation is the fuel for transformation, but it's not. Motivation is the spark, and sparks die. Systems are the fuel. Systems are what carry you when motivation is dead, when willpower is depleted, when you don't feel like it, when every fiber of your being wants to quit. Systems don't care how you feel. They just run, and that's exactly why they work. Right now, you're relying on inspiration to drive your discipline. You wake up, check your emotional state, and decide whether today is a motivated day or not. If you feel good, you act. If you don't, you wait. You tell yourself you'll do it when you feel more energized, more focused, more ready. But feelings are unreliable. They fluctuate based on sleep, stress, blood sugar, the weather, or what someone said to you 3 hours ago. Feelings are the worst possible foundation for discipline. But systems don't require feelings. They just require execution. Let me tell you the difference. Motivation says, I'm going to work out every day because I want to be healthy. That sounds good. It feels good. But the moment you don't want to be healthy more than you want to sleep in, motivation fails. A system says, every morning at 6 a.m., I put on my workout clothes and do 20 minutes of movement. No negotiation, no decision, just execution. See the difference? One relies on desire, the other relies on structure. And structure always wins. James Clear said it perfectly. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Your goals are useless if your systems don't support them. You can want to lose 50 pounds, but if your system involves eating junk food and skipping workouts, you're not going to lose 50 pounds. You're going to stay exactly where you are. Your system is your reality. Everything else is just fantasy. So the question isn't, how do I stay motivated? The question is, what system do I need to build so that motivation becomes irrelevant? And here's how you build it. Step 1. Identify the keystone behavior. A keystone behavior is the one action that, when done consistently, creates a cascade of positive outcomes. It's not everything. It's the one thing that unlocks everything else. For some people, it's working out. When they work out in the morning, they eat better, they're more productive, they sleep better. The workout is the keystone. For others, it's making their bed. Sounds trivial, but it's the first win of the day. And that first win creates momentum that carries into the next task and the next and the next. For others, it's planning the night before. 10 minutes of planning eliminates hours of wasted time the next day. What's your keystone behavior? The one thing that, if you did it every single day, would fundamentally change your trajectory. Identify it and build your system around it. Step 2. Automate the trigger. Motivation relies on internal desire. Systems rely on external triggers. A trigger is a cue that initiates the behavior automatically. You don't have to think. You don't have to decide. The trigger happens and the behavior follows. Your alarm goes off. That's a trigger. You immediately put on workout clothes. That's the behavior. No negotiation, no decision. The trigger initiates the action. You finish dinner. That's a trigger. You immediately go for a 10-minute walk. That's the behavior. You open your laptop. That's a trigger. You immediately open your project file before checking email. That's the behavior. When you link behaviors to triggers, you eliminate the decision-making process. And decision-making is where motivation sneaks in and sabotages you. Step 3. Reduce friction to zero. Every obstacle between you and the behavior is an opportunity for your brain to quit. If working out requires you to find your gym bag, drive to the gym, find parking, change clothes, you're probably not going to work out. That's too much friction. But if working out requires you to walk 5 steps to your living room where your yoga mat is already laid out and your workout video is already cued, you're going to work out. The friction is gone. This is the principle of activation energy. The less energy required to start, the more likely you are to start. So audit your systems. Where's the friction? What's making it hard to execute?
If you want to read more, don't keep the book on a shelf in another room. Keep it on your pillow. When you get into bed, it's already there. Zero friction. If you want to drink more water, don't keep the water bottle in the kitchen. Keep it on your desk. Within arm's reach. Zero friction. If you want to stop wasting time on your phone in the morning, don't keep your phone next to your bed. Keep it in another room. To check it, you have to get up and walk. That's friction for the bad habit. You're not trying to be motivated. You're trying to be strategic. Step 4. Build in accountability. Systems work best when they're not optional, and the easiest way to make them non-optional is to add accountability. Accountability can be external, a coach, a partner, a public commitment. When someone else is watching, you're far less likely to quit. Or it can be internal, a tracking system that makes your progress visible. When you can see the streak, you don't want to break it. Jerry Seinfeld famously used the "don't break the chain" method. He wanted to write jokes every day, so he marked a big red X on a calendar every day he wrote. His only goal was to not break the chain. The chain became the motivation, not the outcome, not the quality of the jokes, just the unbroken chain. That's a system. And it works because it removes the need for motivation. You're not asking yourself if you feel like writing. You're just asking yourself if you want to break the chain. And most days, you don't. Step 5. Designed for bad days. This is the part everyone forgets.
Systems can't be designed for your best days. They have to be designed for your worst days, because your worst days are when you need the system most. On a good day, you don't need a system. You're motivated, you're energized, you'll do the thing anyway. But on a bad day, when you're exhausted, stressed, overwhelmed, that's when the system has to carry you. So your system needs a minimum viable version. You can't work out for an hour? Fine, do 10 minutes. The system says you move your body every day. It doesn't say how much. You can't write 1,000 words? Fine, write 1 sentence. The system says you write every day. It doesn't say how much. The minimum viable version keeps the system alive. It keeps the streak going. It reinforces the identity. And here's the magic. Most of the time, once you start the minimum, you keep going. Because starting is the hard part. Continuing is easy. But even if you don't continue, you've still won. Because you didn't break the system. And an unbroken system compounds. Let me show you what this looks like in a real life. There's a man named Tom. He wanted to get in shape, but he'd failed 100 times. He'd get motivated, go hard for 2 weeks, burn out, and quit. So he stopped relying on motivation and built a system. Every morning, his alarm went off at 6 a.m. That was the trigger. He put his workout clothes on the floor next to his bed the night before. 0 friction. His rule was simple. Put on the clothes and do 1 push-up. That's it. That was the minimum viable version. Most days, he did more than 1 push-up. But some days, he didn't. Some days, life was chaos, and all he did was 1 push-up. But he never broke the system. 18 months later, he'd lost 70 pounds. Not because he was motivated every day, but because the system didn't require motivation. It just required execution. Here's the brutal truth. If you're still waiting for motivation, you're not serious about change. Serious people don't wait for feelings. They build systems. They automate. They eliminate friction. They design for their worst days. And they show up day after day, whether they feel like it or not. Because systems don't care about feelings. They just care about execution. And execution over time is everything. Motivation will fail you. It always does. But a system will carry you when you're too tired to carry yourself. A system will push you forward when you've forgotten why you started. And a system will transform you while you're too busy executing to notice. So stop waiting for motivation. Start building systems. Because discipline isn't about how you feel. It's about what you do regardless of how you feel.
Chapter 12. The 72-Hour Revolution. You have 72 hours to prove you're serious. Not to me, not to anyone else, to yourself. Because here's the truth about transformation. It doesn't happen in the decision. It happens in the 72 hours after the decision. That's the window. That's the moment where talk becomes action or evaporates into another broken promise. You've made decisions before, lots of them. You've committed to change. You've set goals. You've declared that this time will be different. And then 72 hours passed and nothing changed. Because you treated the decision like the destination. You felt the rush of commitment and you mistook that feeling for progress. But the decision is just the starting line. The 72 hours after, that's the race. And most people don't even show up to run it. They make the decision on Sunday night. They feel inspired. They write down their goals. They plan their new life. Monday morning comes and they hit snooze. Monday evening comes and they scroll instead of starting. Tuesday passes in a blur of the same old patterns. By Wednesday, the decision is a memory, and they're right back where they started, waiting for the next burst of inspiration to try again. This is the cycle you've been stuck in, and it ends now. Because if you don't take massive action in the first 72 hours, your brain will assume the decision wasn't serious.
It will file it away with all the other times you said you'd change but didn't. And your nervous system will return to baseline, back to comfort, back to the familiar. But if you do take action, real, tangible, undeniable action in those first 72 hours, something shifts. Your brain says, oh, we're actually doing this. And momentum begins. Let me explain why 72 hours is the magic number. Psychologically, 72 hours is long enough to break the inertia of the old pattern, but short enough that motivation hasn't completely died yet. You're still riding the wave of the decision. You still remember why you committed. The resistance hasn't fully mobilized yet. But after 72 hours, the resistance gets louder. The excuses get more convincing. The old identity reasserts itself. And if you haven't built momentum by then, you're fighting uphill. So the 72-hour revolution is about stacking wins, small, undeniable actions that prove to yourself and to your brain that this time is different. You're not just talking, you're doing. Here's how it works. Hour 1 to 24. The immediate action. Within the first 24 hours of making a decision, you must take one immediate visible action. Not planning, not researching, not preparing. Action. You decided to get healthy? Go for a walk right now. Not tomorrow, now. You decided to start a business. Register the domain. Write the first paragraph of your plan. Send the first email. You decided to fix your finances. Open a savings account. Transfer $10 into it. The action doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be real. Because the first action breaks the pattern of inertia. It signals to your brain that this decision has teeth. And it gives you evidence, proof that you're not just thinking about change, you're creating it. Hour 24 to 48. The identity reinforcement. The second day is about reinforcing the new identity.
You don't just take action, you declare the identity. You don't say, I went for a walk. You say, I'm someone who moves their body. You don't say, I wrote a paragraph. You say, I'm a writer. You don't say, I saved $10. You say, I'm someone who controls their money. This is critical because the action alone isn't enough. You need to link the action to the identity. And you need to take another action, a second data point. You go for another walk. You write another paragraph. You save another $10. Now you're not just someone who did something once. You're someone who does this, present tense, ongoing. Your brain is paying attention, and it's starting to believe you. Hour 48 to 72, the momentum lock. The third day is where most people fail. The initial excitement is gone. The novelty has worn off. The resistance is whispering, okay, you proved your point, you can stop now. This is the moment where you lock in the momentum. You take a third action, and you do something to make the behavior stick. Maybe you tell someone what you're doing. Maybe you put money on it. Maybe you schedule the next 7 days of action. Non-negotiable. You're building the system now. You're transitioning from inspiration to infrastructure. And by the end of 72 hours, you're not the same person who made the decision. You've become someone who follows through. Let me give you a real example. Sarah decided she wanted to write a book. She'd been talking about it for 3 years. 3 years of someday. Then she learned about the 72-hour revolution. Hour 1. She opened a blank document and wrote 500 words. Terrible words. Didn't matter. They existed. Hour 24. She wrote another 500 words. She texted a friend, I'm writing a book. I've written 1,000 words so far. Hour 48. She wrote more 500 words. She scheduled writing time for the next 7 days in her calendar. Non-negotiable. Hour 72. She joined an online writing group. She posted her word count. She committed publicly. By the end of 72 hours, she wasn't someone who wanted to write a book. She was someone who was writing a book. 6 months later, the book was done. Not because she stayed motivated for 6 months,
but because the 72-hour revolution created a momentum she couldn't stop. Here's what you need to understand. The 72-hour revolution isn't about completing the goal. It's about becoming undeniable. You're proving to yourself that you're serious, that this isn't another false start, that this time you're all in. And your brain, once it sees the evidence, will start working with you instead of against you. So here's your assignment, and it starts the moment you finish this chapter. Identify the one thing you've been saying you'll do but haven't done. Not 5 things, 1 thing. And in the next 72 hours, take 3 actions that prove you're serious. Hour 1 to 24, 1 immediate action, something visible, undeniable, real. Hour 24 to 48, 1 identity-reinforcing action. Declare who you are, then act like it. Hour 48 to 72, 1 momentum-locking action. Build the system. Make it stick. That's it. 3 actions, 72 hours. At the end of those 72 hours, you will not be the same person. You'll have evidence. You'll have momentum. You'll have proof that you're capable of change. And that proof is more powerful than any motivation you'll ever feel. Because motivation fades, but evidence lasts. The 72-hour revolution is your proving ground. It's where intentions become actions, where decisions become identity, where talk becomes transformation. You have 72 hours. The clock starts now.
Chapter 13. Building momentum that can't be stopped. Momentum is the most underrated force in human transformation. It's invisible. It's quiet, but it's unstoppable. Right now, you're fighting against momentum. The momentum of years of the same patterns, the same choices, the same version of yourself. That momentum wants to keep you exactly where you are, and it's powerful. But here's the secret. Momentum doesn't care which direction it's going. Once you get it moving in the right direction, it carries you with the same force that was holding you back. And when you have momentum on your side, discipline becomes effortless. You're not pushing anymore. You're being pulled. The problem is, most people never build enough momentum to feel the pull. They take 1 step forward, then 2 steps back. They start, they stop, they start again. And momentum never builds. They're forever stuck in the starting phase, forever expending maximum energy for minimum results. But momentum works on a compound curve. The first steps are the hardest. They require the most energy. They produce the least visible results. But if you keep going, if you push through the resistance phase, momentum begins to build. And once it builds, the effort decreases while the results accelerate. This is Newton's first law applied to your life. An object in motion stays in motion. Once you're moving, staying in motion takes less energy than starting from zero. But you have to get moving first, and you have to stay moving long enough for momentum to take over. Let me break down the phases of momentum so you know exactly where you are and what's coming. Phase 1, the friction phase, days 1 through 21. This is hell. Everything is hard. Every action requires maximum effort. Your brain is screaming at you to stop. The results are invisible. The discomfort is everywhere. This is where 90% of people quit. They expect immediate results. They expect transformation to feel good. They expect momentum to kick in on day 3, but it doesn't. Day 3 is still friction. Day 10 is still friction. Day 20 is still friction. You're pushing a boulder uphill and it feels like it's not moving. But it is. You just can't see it yet. Every single action you take in the friction phase is an investment. You're not seeing returns, but you're building capital. You're rewiring neural pathways. You're proving to yourself that you can endure discomfort. You're stacking evidence that you're someone who follows through.
The friction phase is not a sign that it's not working. It's a sign that it is working. And the only way through it is to keep moving, no matter how hard it feels, no matter how invisible the progress is. Because on the other side of friction is flow. Phase 2, the tipping point. Days 21 through 40. Something shifts. You wake up one morning, and the thing that felt impossible 3 weeks ago feels normal. Not easy, but normal. You're not fighting yourself as hard. The resistance is quieter. The action that used to require a pep talk now just happens. This is the tipping point. This is where behavior starts becoming habit. Neuroscientists have found that it takes on average 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic. But the tipping point, the moment where it starts feeling less like force, happens around day 21 to 40. You're not all the way there yet, but you can feel the momentum building. The boulder you've been pushing uphill, it's cresting the peak. And soon, it's going to start rolling on its own. This is the most dangerous phase. Because you feel better, you're tempted to relax. You think, I've got this now. I can ease up. Don't. The tipping point is not the finish line. It's the midpoint. You're not coasting yet. You're transitioning from friction to flow. And if you ease up now, you'll slide right back into friction. Keep pushing. Keep stacking the days. Keep reinforcing the identity. Because the real magic happens in phase 3. Phase 3, the momentum phase. This is where everything changes. The action that used to require willpower now requires nothing. It's just what you do. You don't debate whether to work out. You work out. It's automatic. You don't negotiate with yourself about starting work. You just start. It's who you are. The momentum is carrying you now. And instead of effort, you feel ease. Instead of resistance, you feel rhythm. This is the phase where results accelerate. Not because you're working harder, but because consistency compounds. One workout doesn't change your body, but 60 workouts, your body transforms. One day of focused work doesn't build a business, but 60 days, you've built something real. One conversation doesn't heal a relationship, but 60 intentional interactions, the relationship is different. Momentum in the momentum phase doesn't just maintain, it multiplies. And here's the beautiful part. Once you reach this phase, it's harder to stop than to continue. Because stopping would break the identity you've built. Stopping would feel wrong. You've become someone who does this. And people who do this. But here's the critical insight. Momentum is fragile in the beginning and resilient at the end. In the friction phase, one missed day can derail you. The momentum is so small, so tentative, that any break can reset you to 0. But in the momentum phase, one missed day is just a blip. The momentum is strong enough to absorb it. You don't spiral, you just return. This is why the first 40 days are everything. If you can survive the friction phase and push through the tipping point, the momentum phase takes care of itself. But most people never get there. They quit in the friction phase because they don't understand that friction is temporary. They think, this is too hard. It's always going to be this hard. But it's not. It's only hard in the beginning. Here's how you build unstoppable momentum. Rule 1. Never miss twice. You're going to miss a day. Life happens. You get sick. You travel. Something unexpected comes up. That's fine. Miss once. But never miss twice. Because missing once is a deviation. Missing twice is the beginning of a new pattern. And patterns, once started, build their own momentum in the wrong direction. So if you miss Monday, you show up Tuesday. Non-negotiable. The streak matters.
but the comeback matters more. Rule 2. Stack small wins daily. Momentum isn't built on massive actions, it's built on small, consistent actions stacked over time. You don't need to work out for 2 hours. You need to work out for 20 minutes every single day. You don't need to write a chapter. You need to write 300 words every single day. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You need to make one better choice every single day. Small wins create momentum, and momentum creates big wins. Rule 3. Celebrate the momentum, not just the outcome. Most people only celebrate the end result. They wait until they've lost the weight, build the business, achieve the goal. But by then, the momentum has already done the work. Celebrate the momentum itself. Celebrate the fact that you're on day 30. Celebrate the fact that you didn't quit. Celebrate the fact that you're becoming someone new. Because momentum is the real achievement. The outcome is just the byproduct. Rule 4. Protect the momentum like your life depends on it. Because it does. Once you have momentum, everything wants to steal it. Distractions, obligations, other people's emergencies. You have to guard it. You have to say no to things that threaten the streak. You have to prioritize the action that's building your future over the noise that's maintaining your past. This sounds selfish. It's not. It's survival. Because without momentum, you're back to friction. And friction is exhausting. Momentum is the gift you give yourself. The force that makes discipline feel light instead of heavy. Let me tell you about Marcus. He wanted to build a business, but he'd been stuck for 5 years. Every time he started, he'd lose momentum within a week. Then he committed to the momentum phases. He decided he'd work on his business for 1 hour every single morning for 60 days, no exceptions. The first 3 weeks were brutal. He hated it. He wanted to quit every single day. But he didn't. He kept showing up. Around day 25, something shifted. The work started flowing. Ideas came easier. The resistance faded. By day 40, he didn't need an alarm. He woke up excited to work. By day 60, he'd built more in 2 months than he had in the previous 5 years. Not because he worked harder, but because he built momentum. And momentum carried him. That's the power of unstoppable momentum. It turns discipline into destiny. So here's your mission. Start building. Pick the one behavior that, if done consistently, would change everything. And commit to 60 days. Not 7, not 30, 60. Track every single day, celebrate every win. Protect the streak like it's the most valuable thing you own. Because it is. Momentum isn't just a force. It's a future pulling you forward. And once you feel that pull, you'll never want to go back to pushing.
Chapter 14. The person you're becoming in the dark. Nobody's watching. Right now, in this moment, when no one's looking, when no one will know, when there's no audience, no accountability, no applause, who are you? That's the real question. Because the person you are in the dark is the person you actually are. Not the person you present to the world, not the person you want to be, not the person you pretend to be when the lights are on. The person you are when no one's watching. That's the truth. And if you want real transformation, the kind that changes your life 360 degrees, you have to become someone different in the dark. Because that's where discipline is forged. Not on stage, not in public, not when people are cheering, but in the quiet moments when you're alone with yourself and your choices. This is the ultimate test of your commitment.
Can you keep the promise to yourself when breaking it would be invisible? Can you do the work when no one will see it? Can you make the right choice when the wrong choice has zero consequences? Most people can't. They perform discipline. They show up when it matters to their reputation. They work hard when someone's watching. They make the right choice when it's visible. But in the dark, they take shortcuts. They cheat. They quit. And they wonder why they're not transforming. It's because transformation doesn't happen in the performance. It happens in the privacy. Let me paint you a picture. It's 11 p.m. You're alone in your kitchen. You've been eating clean all week. Nobody knows you're standing in front of the fridge right now. Nobody would know if you ate the ice cream. Your partner is asleep. Your friends aren't here. There's no one to disappoint but yourself. What do? That choice, that invisible private choice, determines who you're becoming. If you eat the ice cream, you're becoming someone who abandons their commitments when no one's watching. If you close the fridge and walk away, you're becoming someone who keeps promises to themselves, even in the dark. And who you're becoming in those moments matters infinitely more than who you appear to be in public, because the private choices compound into the public identity. You can't fake discipline in the dark, and you can't build real transformation without it. Here's why this matters so much. Your brain knows when you're performing versus when you're being. When you're performing discipline, doing it for others, for validation, for appearances, there's always a part of you that knows it's conditional. And conditional discipline collapses the moment the conditions change. But when you're being disciplined in the dark, when you're doing it for yourself, when no one will ever know, your brain registers that as truth. And truth rewires your identity. Every private victory is a vote for your future self. Every time you choose the hard right over the easy wrong, when no one's watching, you're building unshakable character. Character isn't what you do when people are watching. Character is what you do when they're not. And character is the foundation of unstoppable discipline. Let me tell you about David. Successful businessman, respected in his community. Everyone thought he was disciplined, driven, unstoppable. But David knew the truth. In public, he was all of those things. But in private, he was a mess. He'd skip workouts when he traveled. He'd binge junk food alone in hotel rooms. He'd waste hours scrolling when no one was around. He was two people, the public version and the private version. And the gap between them was destroying him. Because you can't sustain a double life. Eventually, the private version starts leaking into the public version. His energy dropped. His focus wavered. His confidence, once unshakable, became fragile.
Because deep down, he knew he was a fraud. Not to the world, but to himself. Then he made a decision. He decided that the person he was in the dark had to match the person he was in the light. He stopped performing discipline and started living it. He worked out in hotel rooms when no one knew. He ate clean when traveling alone. He did the work even when no one would see it. And something profound happened. He started respecting himself again. Not because others validated him, but because he could look himself in the mirror and know that he was the same person in public and in private. That alignment, that integrity changed everything. His confidence returned. His energy skyrocketed. His results multiplied. Because when you're no longer managing two versions of yourself, you have twice the power. Here's the hard truth. You're lying to yourself right now. You're presenting one version to the world and living another version in private. And the gap between those two versions is where your potential goes to die. You tell people you're disciplined, but you know you're not. Not really. not when no one's watching. You tell people you're committed, but you know you cut corners. You know you take the easy path when it's invisible. You tell people you're changing, but you know you're still the same person in the dark. And that dissonance, that gap between who you say you are and who you actually are, is eating you alive. The only way to close that gap is to become the same person everywhere. To make the choices in the dark that you'd make in the light. To keep the promises to yourself that you'd keep to others. To hold yourself to the standard you hold the world to. This is integrity, and integrity is the only foundation strong enough to hold lasting transformation. Here's how you start building it. Practice 1. The invisible commitment. Make a commitment that no one else knows about, something that only you will track, something that only you will honor. Maybe it's meditating for 5 minutes every morning. Maybe it's reading 10 pages before bed. Maybe it's doing 10 push-ups every time you go to the bathroom. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it's private. And then you keep it every single day. Not for applause, not for validation, for yourself. Because every time you keep an invisible commitment, you're proving to yourself that you're trustworthy. And self-trust is the currency of discipline. Practice 2. The mirror test. Every night before bed, look yourself in the eye in the mirror and ask, did I become someone better today, or did I stay the same? Not did I look better to others. Not did I perform well. Did I become better? And be brutally honest, because you can lie to everyone else, but you can't lie to the person in the mirror. If the answer is yes, acknowledge it, celebrate it, let that win sink in. If the answer is no, don't shame yourself, just commit to making tomorrow different. The mirror doesn't lie, and the more you practice looking yourself in the eye, the harder it becomes to betray yourself in the dark. Practice 3. The no witness standard. Set a standard for yourself that applies whether anyone's watching or not. I don't eat junk food, period. Not, I don't eat junk food when people are watching. Not, I try not to eat junk food. I don't. And that standard applies at midnight in your kitchen just as much as it applies at a business lunch. When your standard is the same in private and public, you eliminate the exhaustion of managing 2 versions of yourself. You become one person, whole, integrated, unstoppable. Here's what happens when you become the same person in the dark as you are in the light. Your confidence becomes unshakable because it's not based on performance, it's based on truth. Your discipline becomes effortless because you're not fighting against your private self. You're aligned. Your transformation becomes inevitable because you're not just changing behaviors, you're changing identity. And identity, once changed, is permanent. The person you're becoming in the dark is the person you'll be everywhere. So stop performing, stop pretending, stop managing 2 versions of yourself. Become one person, the person who keeps promises to themselves, the person who does the right thing when no one's watching. That person, that's who you're becoming. And that person is unstoppable.
Chapter 15. When discipline becomes identity. There is a moment. You can't predict it, but you'll recognize it when it happens. When discipline stops being something you do and becomes something you are. It's not a gradual shift. It's a snap, a click, a sudden realization. You wake up one morning and you don't have to force yourself anymore. You don't have to negotiate. You don't have to pump yourself up or talk yourself into it. You just are. You are disciplined. Not trying to be, not working on it, not aspiring to it. You are. And when discipline becomes identity, everything changes. Because identity is the most powerful force in human behavior. Stronger than motivation. Stronger than willpower. Stronger than goals. Identity is the lens through which you see yourself. And you will always act in accordance with that lens. If you see yourself as undisciplined, you'll sabotage every attempt at discipline, because undisciplined people don't follow through, and you have to protect the identity. But if you see yourself as disciplined, you'll find a way, because disciplined people don't quit, and you have to protect the identity. Right now, you're in transition. You're between identities. The old you, the one who hit snooze, who procrastinated, who made excuses, is dying. And the new you, the one who shows up, who follows through, who keeps promises, is being born. And birth is painful. You're caught between two versions of yourself. Some days you act like the new you. Some days you slip back into the old you. And that inconsistency is torturing you. Because you can feel the new identity forming, but you haven't fully claimed it yet. You're still hedging, still leaving the door open to the old version just in case this doesn't work out. But here's the truth. The new identity is waiting for you to claim it. Not someday. Not when you've proven yourself. Now. You don't become disciplined after 100 days of perfect action. You become disciplined the moment you decide you are, and then you act accordingly. The action doesn't create the identity. The identity creates the action. Let me show you how this works. Right now, you probably say things like, I'm trying to be more disciplined. I'm working on building better habits. I want to be the kind of person who follows through. Do you hear it? The distance? The separation? The future tense? You're talking about discipline like it's something separate from you, something you're pursuing, something you might achieve someday. But disciplined people don't talk like that. They say, I'm disciplined. I don't skip workouts. I'm someone who keeps commitments. Present tense, declarative, non-negotiable. The language reveals the identity, and the identity drives the behavior. So here's the shift. Stop talking about discipline like it's a destination. Start talking about it like it's a fact. Not, I'm going to start waking up early, but I wake up early. That's who I am. Not, I'm trying to eat healthier, but I eat healthy. That's what I do. Not, I want to be consistent, but I'm consistent. That's my identity. Your brain is listening, and it believes what you tell it as long as you say it with conviction and back it up with action. This is the mechanism of identity shift. You declare it. You act on it. You collect evidence. You reinforce it. And eventually, the declaration becomes truth. But here's the critical part. You can't half commit to an identity. You can't say, I'm disciplined, and then hit snooze 3 times. Your brain will reject the identity as false. You have to act as if it's already true, even when it doesn't feel true yet. This is what psychologists call acting as if. You act as if you're already the person you want to become, and in the acting, you become them. Not fake it till you make it. Act as if till it's true. What would a disciplined person do right now? They do the hard thing. So you do the hard thing. What would a disciplined person choose in this moment? They'd choose growth over comfort. So you choose growth over comfort. Every single choice becomes a question. Is this what a disciplined person would do? And if the answer is no, you don't do it. Because that's not who you are anymore.
Let me tell you about Rachel. Rachel was overweight, broke, and stuck. She'd tried to change 100 times, and every time she'd failed. Then she stopped trying to change her behavior and started changing her identity. She didn't say, "I'm going to lose weight." She said, "I'm an athlete." She had never been an athlete. She could barely run a mile. But she claimed the identity anyway. And then she asked herself every single day, what would an athlete do? An athlete wouldn't skip a workout, so she didn't skip workouts. An athlete wouldn't eat garbage, so she stopped eating garbage. An athlete wouldn't stay up late scrolling, so she prioritized sleep. Within 6 months, she'd lost 50 pounds. Within a year, she ran her first marathon. Not because she became an athlete, but because she decided she was an athlete, and then she acted accordingly. The identity came first. The evidence followed.
This is the secret of permanent transformation. You don't wait for the results to claim the identity. You claim the identity and let the results follow. Because results are temporary. Identity is permanent. You can lose 50 pounds and gain it back if your identity is still someone who struggles with weight. But if your identity is an athlete, you'll never let yourself stay out of shape because athletes don't do that. You can have a good month financially and blow it all if your identity is still someone who's bad with money. But if your identity is someone who builds wealth, you'll protect every dollar because that's what wealth builders do. Identity protects the results, and it sustains the behavior long after motivation dies. So here's the process for making discipline your identity. Step 1. Declare the identity. Say it out loud. Write it down. Make it real. I am disciplined. Not I'm becoming disciplined. Not I want to be disciplined. I am disciplined. Say it even if it feels like a lie, especially if it feels like a lie. Because you're not lying. You're declaring what's true about the future version of you. And you're collapsing the timeline by claiming it now. Step 2. Collect micro-evidence. Every single action that aligns with the identity is evidence. You woke up on time? Evidence. You did the workout? Evidence. You kept the commitment? Evidence. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine, and when you start collecting evidence of the new identity, your brain starts believing it. At first, the evidence is small, fragile, easy to dismiss. But as it accumulates, it becomes undeniable. And one day, you look at the mountain of evidence and you realize, this isn't who I'm trying to be, this is who I am. Step 3. Reject evidence of the old identity. This is just as important as collecting new evidence. When you slip, and you will slip, you don't let it define you. The old you would say, "See? I'm not disciplined. I knew I couldn't change." The new you says, "That was a mistake, but it's not who I am. I'm disciplined, and disciplined people get back on track." You reject the old narrative. You refuse to let a single moment of weakness redefine your entire identity. Because identity isn't about perfection, it's about direction. Step 4. Surround yourself with identity reinforcement. You become like the people you surround yourself with, and you become like the environment you live in. If you're surrounded by undisciplined people, your identity will be under constant attack. But if you surround yourself with disciplined people, or even just stories of disciplined people, your identity gets reinforced. Read books about disciplined people. Listen to podcasts with disciplined people. Join communities of disciplined people. Let their identity remind you of yours. And change your environment to reflect the identity. If you're disciplined, your space is organized, your schedule is intentional, your inputs are high quality. You don't just act disciplined, you build a life that reflects discipline. Step 5. Defend the identity. Once you've claimed it, you protect it. When someone offers you the easy way out, you say no, not because you're trying to be disciplined, but because that's not who you are. I don't eat that, not I'm trying not to eat that. I don't skip workouts, not I'm trying to work out more. The language is definitive because the identity is non-negotiable. And when you defend the identity consistently, it becomes armor. Nothing can shake it. Not temptation, not setbacks, not other people's doubt. Because you know who you are. Here's the beautiful paradox. The moment discipline becomes your identity, it stops feeling like discipline. It just feels like being yourself. You don't have to force it anymore. You don't have to fight yourself. You don't have to manufacture motivation. You just live in alignment with who you are. And that alignment, that's freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom from the constant internal battle. The freedom from negotiating with yourself. The freedom from wondering if you'll follow through. You will, because that's who you are. The person you were at the beginning of this audiobook, they're gone. The person who hit snooze, who made excuses, who lived in the gap between intention and action, they don't exist anymore. You killed them. And in their place, you built someone new. Someone who shows up. Someone who follows through. Someone who keeps promises to themselves. Someone disciplined. Not because you have to be, but because you are. And now that discipline is your identity, nothing can stop you.
Chapter 16. The Life You Forced into Existence. Look around. This is the life you forced into existence. Not the life you hoped for. Not the life you wished for. Not the life you waited for. The life you forced. Through discipline, through choice, through relentless, uncompromising action. 6 months ago, or maybe 6 weeks ago, or 60 days ago, you were someone else. Someone stuck. Someone waiting. Someone living a life they didn't design. And now? Now you're here. The alarm goes off, and you don't hit snooze. You rise, because that's who you are. The hard choice presents itself, and you don't hesitate. You take it, because that's what you do. The old temptations appear, and you don't even feel them anymore. They're irrelevant, because they belong to a version of you that no longer exists. This is what transformation looks like. Not a sudden epiphany, not a lightning bolt moment, but the accumulation of thousands of micro-decisions that compounded into a completely different life. You didn't transform because you found motivation. You transformed because you built systems. You didn't transform because you got lucky. You transformed because you refused to quit. You didn't transform because it was easy. You transformed because you were willing to endure the discomfort that most people run from. And now, the life you're living is the proof. Let me remind you where you started. You started in the comfort trap, choosing ease over growth, choosing familiar over better, choosing the warm bath you were drowning in over the cold shock of change. You were waiting to feel ready, waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for permission from a universe that was never going to give it. Your brain was your enemy, feeding you excuses, manufacturing resistance, protecting the old version of you at the expense of the future version. You had escape routes everywhere, built-in justifications for quitting, safety nets that guaranteed you'd never fly. You were lying to yourself, softening the truth, managing 2 versions of yourself, the public performance and the private reality. You were relying on motivation,
And motivation was failing you day after day, leaving you stranded in the gap between intention and action. That was then. And then, you made a decision. Not a wish, not a hope, a decision. You decided that the old version of you was dead, that the comfort you were clinging to was a cage, that waiting was just another word for dying slowly. And you acted. You forced yourself to move within 3 seconds. You built systems that made discipline inevitable. You burned the escape routes. You practiced brutal honesty. You rewired your reward system. You chose calculated suffering. You built momentum that couldn't be stopped. You became the same person in the dark as you were in the light. And discipline stopped being something you did and became something you are. And now, here you are, living a life that didn't exist 6 months ago, a life you had to force into being. Your body is different, not because of one workout, but because of 100 workouts, because you showed up when you didn't want to, because you moved when every fiber of your being wanted to stay still. Your mind is different, sharper, more focused, more resilient, because you trained it to tolerate discomfort, because you stopped letting it run the show. Your relationships are different, deeper, more authentic, because you stopped performing and started being, because you had the hard conversations, because you showed up as your whole self. Your work is different, more meaningful, more impactful, because you stopped procrastinating and started producing, because you built the thing you kept saying you'd build. Your bank account is different, growing instead of shrinking, because you made different choices, because you valued future you over present you. This is the life you forced into existence. And the most beautiful part, you're just getting started. Because discipline compounds. The stronger you get, the more you can handle. The more you can handle, the bigger the challenges you can take on. The person you are today would terrify the person you were 6 months ago. And the person you'll be 6 months from now will make today's version look like a warm-up. Because you've discovered the secret. You are not fixed. You are not limited by your past. You are not defined by your failures. You are whoever you decide to be, backed by the discipline to act accordingly. And that power? That's infinite. But let me give you a warning.
The war isn't over. The old version of you will try to come back. Not today, maybe not next week, but eventually. There will be a moment when life gets chaotic, when stress spikes, when something breaks. And in that moment, the old patterns will whisper. They'll say, "Remember when things were easier? Remember when you didn't have to try so hard? You can go back, just this once, and you'll feel the pull." This is the test. Not the test of starting, not the test of building momentum, but the test of staying. Because anyone can transform for a season. The question is, can you stay transformed for a lifetime? And the answer is yes, but only if you remember this. Discipline is not a destination. It's a practice, a daily practice, a lifelong practice. You don't arrive at discipline and then stop. You live it every day, in every choice, in every moment. The life you forced into existence requires the same force to maintain. Not as much force. The systems are built, the identity is solid, the momentum is strong, but force nonetheless. So here's your mission, now and forever. Protect the systems. Don't let chaos dismantle what discipline built. When life gets messy, the systems hold you together. Honor the identity. You're not someone who used to be disciplined. You're someone who is disciplined. Present tense, always. Never stop stacking evidence. Every day, collect proof that you're still the person you became. One workout, one healthy meal, one focused hour.
Evidence compounds into unshakable confidence. Stay in the dark. Keep doing the right thing when no one's watching. That's where character lives. That's where transformation is sustained. Remember the cost of comfort. Comfort is still the enemy. It's just wearing a different disguise now. It says, you've earned a break. But breaks become backslides, and backslides become the old life. And finally, teach what you've learned. Because the best way to solidify your own transformation is to help someone else through theirs. Tell your story. Share your systems. Show someone else that they don't have to wait for ready, that they can force themselves into discipline, that they can change their life 360 degrees. Your transformation isn't just for you. It's proof for everyone watching that change is possible, that discipline isn't the genetic gift. It's a choice, a daily, relentless, uncompromising choice. And when you teach it, you reinforce it in yourself. So let me ask you one final question. Who are you now? Not who were you, not who do you want to be. Who are you right now, in this moment, after everything you've forced yourself to become? You're disciplined. You're relentless. You're someone who doesn't quit when it gets hard. You're someone who keeps promises to themselves. You're someone who lives intentionally, acts decisively, and refuses to settle for a life they didn't design. You're someone who forced a completely new existence into reality through sheer will and unwavering commitment. And that person can do anything. The life you forced into existence is just the beginning. There are bigger challenges ahead, bigger goals, bigger versions of yourself waiting to be born. And you're ready. Not because you feel ready, but because you've proven to yourself in the dark, in the friction, in the momentum, that you're capable of forcing yourself to become whoever you need to be. So go. Take the discipline you've built and apply it to the next frontier, the next goal, the next version of yourself that's waiting to be forced into existence. And remember, you didn't come this far to only come this far. You came this far to prove that there are no limits, only the ones you accept. And you don't accept limits anymore. You force past them every single time. This is your life now, the life you forced into existence, and it's only just beginning.
Closing. You're still here. That means something. Most people would have quit chapters ago. They would have told themselves they'd come back to it later. They would have let the resistance win. But you didn't. You stayed. You listened. You absorbed. And that choice, the choice to stay when leaving was easier, that's the first piece of evidence that you're already changing. Let me tell you what's happening right now, in this exact moment. Your brain is trying to file this away. It's trying to categorize this audiobook as interesting information and move on. It wants to let you feel good about listening without actually requiring you to change. Don't let it. Because this wasn't information. This was a blueprint, a challenge, a roadmap to a completely different life. And roadmaps only work if you follow them. Here's what you know now that you didn't know before. You know that comfort is the cage you built, and you've been living in it, calling it safety, while it slowly suffocated your potential. You know that readiness is a myth, a story your brain tells you to keep you from taking the leap that terrifies it. You know that your brain isn't your enemy. It's just wired for survival, not growth. And growth requires you to override the programming.
You know that willpower is finite, but systems are infinite. And the disciplined life isn't built on force. It's built on architecture. You know that identity drives everything. And the moment you stop trying to be disciplined and start being disciplined, everything shifts. You know that the person you are in the dark, when no one's watching, when no one will know, that person is the real you. And that person determines your destiny. You know that motivation will fail you, but momentum, once built, will carry you farther than motivation ever could. You know that transformation isn't one big moment. It's the compound effect of thousands of micro decisions stacked over time until you're unrecognizable. You know that discipline isn't restriction. It's freedom. Freedom from the constant internal battle. Freedom from the weight of unkept promises. Freedom from living a life you didn't design. And most importantly, you know this. You are capable of forcing yourself into a completely new existence. Not someday, not when you're ready, now. But knowing isn't enough. You've heard the blueprint. Now you have to build. And building starts in the next 72 hours. Remember what we talked about. The 72-hour revolution. This is it. This is your moment. Within the next 72 hours, you will prove to yourself and to your brain whether this was just another audiobook or the beginning of everything. Here's your 72-hour challenge. Hour 1 to 24. Take one immediate action. Not tomorrow, not Monday, today, right now. The moment this audiobook ends, do one thing that proves you're serious. Go for a walk. Do 10 push-ups. Delete the app that's stealing your time. Text someone you've been avoiding. Open the document. Make the call. One action, immediate, undeniable. Hour 24 to 48. Declare the identity and act again. Say it out loud. I am disciplined. Write it down. Text it to someone. Make it real. And then take another action that reinforces it. 2 actions in 48 hours. 2 pieces of evidence that you're not the same person who started this audiobook. Hour 48 to 72. Lock in the momentum. Take the 3rd action and build the system. Schedule the next 7 days of action, create the trigger, eliminate the friction, build accountability. Make the next week inevitable. By the end of 72 hours, you won't just know you can change, you'll have proof. And proof is more powerful than belief. Let me be brutally honest with you one last time. Most people who listen to this audiobook will do nothing. They'll feel inspired for a few hours, maybe even a few days, and then they'll go right back to the life they had before. The comfort, the excuses, the waiting. And in 6 months, they'll still be in the same place, wondering why nothing ever changes. Don't be most people. You didn't listen to this audiobook to stay the same. You listened because some part of you, the part that's still alive, still fighting, still believing,
knows you're capable of more. That part is right. You are capable of more. But capability without action is just potential. And potential, unrealized, is tragedy. So don't let this be another moment of inspiration that fades into nothing.
Let this be the moment everything changed. The moment you stopped waiting and started forcing. The moment you stopped trying and started being. The moment you decided that the old version of you was dead and the new version, the disciplined, relentless, unstoppable version, was born. 6 months from now, you're going to look back at this moment, and you're going to have one of two reactions. Either you'll think, that was the day everything changed. That was the day I finally stopped talking and started becoming. Or you'll think, I wish I had actually done something. I wish I hadn't let that moment pass. Which one will it be? That's not a rhetorical question. That's the question that determines your future. And the answer isn't found in your intentions. It's found in your actions. In the next 72 hours. Starting now. Here's what I want you to remember. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about direction. You're going to mess up. You're going to have bad days. You're going to slip back into old patterns occasionally. That's not failure. That's being human. Failure is quitting. Failure is giving up. Failure is letting one bad day turn into a bad week, a bad month, a bad year. But you don't quit anymore. You stumble and you get back up. You miss a day and you show up the next. You fall and you rise. Because that's who you are now. You're not someone who's trying to be disciplined. You're someone who is disciplined. And disciplined people, they don't quit. They just keep going. One more thing. If this audiobook changed something in you, if it lit a fire, if it shifted your perspective, if it gave you the clarity or the courage to finally take action, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Tell someone. Recommend it. Not for me, but for them. Because somewhere out there, someone you know is stuck in the same place you were when you started this audiobook. They're waiting to feel ready. They're negotiating with themselves. They're living in the gap between who they are and who they could be. And they need to hear this message. They need to know that transformation isn't magic. It's mechanics. They need to know that discipline can be forced, that identity can be chosen, that a completely different life can be built one micro decision at a time. So share this. Pay it forward. Be the proof that change is possible. This is where we part ways. You came to this audiobook as one person, and you're leaving as someone different. Not because you've transformed yet, but because you've been given the tools, the blueprint, the clarity. And now it's up to you. The life you want, the body, the mind, the relationships, the success, the freedom, it's all waiting for you. But it's not going to come to you. You have to force it into existence. And you can. You absolutely can. So go. Take the next 72 hours and prove to yourself that this time is different. Take the next 60 days and build the momentum that can't be stopped. Take the rest of your life and become the person you were always capable of being. Force yourself to be disciplined and change your life 360 degrees. Not someday, today, right now. The clock is ticking, and your future is waiting.